The GOP boos are not fooling anyone, and everyone fucking knows that Republicans want to slash Social Security and Medicare. Now, the new Republican House Speaker may not be the negotiation ninja that he thinks he fucking might be in his head. Now, after being forced into submission by people like Donald Trump and Representative the pedophile Matt Gaetz, one would think that Speaker Kevin McCarthy would have downgraded his own self-assessment as a master negotiator. But no, ever since he finally secured a seat after 15 humiliating rounds of his own caucus voting against him, McCarthy has forged ahead with what he clearly thinks is a genius plan to trick the current president, Joe Biden, into destroying Social Security and Medicare for him, and this is considered a mobster tactic. Now, as it was explained in the Standing Room Only newsletter, McCarthy's strategy seems to be to threaten to force the U.S. into debt default, and simply let Biden ransom like McCarthy would like paid, i.e., the destruction of Social Security and Medicare. McCarthy really thought that this would work. Suggests that he is not faking his very public admiration for Trump, and he loves to use insinuation to communicate his desires that, usually for legal liability reasons, he can't speak for out loud. McCarthy, not known to anyone to be a bright person, he appears to have really thought that he could somehow trick Biden into not just decriminating these long-standing health care and retirement programs, but that he could do so in a way to force Democrats to take this fall. Not unsurprisingly, McCarthy's clever negotiation style of being silent about his demands backfired spectacularly. McCarthy allowed Biden the space during his State of the Union address to show the public that Republicans are gunning for these popular programs by provoking a defensive denial of yelling and heckling from Republicans that is so over the top that it ended up confirming the accusation. Now McCarthy is having to deal with the very thing he was trying to avoid, a news cycle dominated by talk about how Republicans want to steal away the money and accounts workers spend their whole lives paying into as security when they retire. And just how badly did McCarthy's gambit backfire? Bigly. So badly, it backfired so bigly that even Republican-friendly outlets like Axios and Politico ran with the stories about the GOP's secret yearnings to end Social Security and Medicare. And Axios described Biden as baiting Republicans to agree with his push to protect Medicare and Social Security. And the New York Times, which is usually overly credulous to Republican talking points, used similar tactics. Now here's how the Washington Post described that moment. President Biden responded by professing surprise that they had changed their position, and now, like those programs, saying, "I enjoyed conversion," adding that he would veto any effort to cut Social Security and Medicare, and he added rarely, but apparently it's not going to be a problem. You don't bait people into saying something if they wanted to say it. Now, implicit throughout the press coverage is that the GOP designs on Social Security and Medicare are well known. As Tara Golshan at Vanity Fair pointed out in a lengthy Twitter thread, Republican attacks on Social Security and Medicare aren't nearly as well disguised as they seem to think it is. The euphemisms that Republicans use aren't nearly as ingenious as they think either. So, like Senator Rick Scott, a Republican from Florida, offered a hilariously typical example of how bad Republicans are at hiding their intentions. He was trying to deny the plan to destroy Social Security and Medicare, but he ended up tweeting confirmation that this is exactly what he wanted to do. Despite his flailing denials, it's been clear from the moment that Scott first released his 11-point plan that the main purpose of the sunset provision was so that Social Security and Medicare would expire, and the GOP-controlled Congress would just never get around to voting to keep it around. It's once again proof that Republicans think voters are extremely fucking stupid, but Scott really does seem to think that if Republicans just kill these programs passively instead of taking a vote against them, people wouldn't notice or blame the GOP, but in reality, of course, people tend to notice that when their checks stop showing up, or their doctor won't see them anymore. And contrary to the fantasies of McCarthy and Scott, voters are not confused about what party exactly wants to slash these programs. As Heather Digby Partonhead reminded us at Salam, Republicans have been trying to do away with these vital programs from the moment that they were introduced and basically installed. Basically, the attempts to disguise their desires have grown more convoluted over the decades. Now, of course, during George W. Bush's administration, for instance, the Republicans thought that they could smuggle Social Security destruction past voters by calling it privatization, and they soon learned that voters who tend to be skeptical of politicians already saw directly through this BS. Democrats won the 2006 midterms by a healthy margin, but the Republicans dreamed that they could fool the public with flimsy code words never died. Former Vice Squatter Mike Pence, who also never mistaken for the sharpest tool in the shed, has been out there putting the final nail in his presidential aspirations by talking up Social Security privatization. Now, being generous to Republicans for a moment, there is one reason for them to think a majority of Americans are fucking stupid. They do keep voting for Republicans for no reason whatsoever. And the Republicans, in fact, no, this is shocking anyway because the Democrats had won the midterms last year. Republicans, in fact, won more voters in 2022 than Democrats did. And that's hard evidence right there that a majority of Americans are easily snowballed into voting against their own fucking best interests. Now, those numbers are disappointing reminders that voters could definitely be smarter, of course, but it's not the slam dunk evidence of American imbecility that Republican politicians seem to think it is. The likelier explanation is that voters understand that Democrats will protect them from Republican efforts to decimate Medicare and Social Security, but perversely, that understanding freed some people up to vote GOP as a means to exercise their racist and sexist resentments, and secure in the knowledge that Biden in the White House is in the White House to shield them from the worst consequences of electing a bunch of right-wing radicals. Now, we've seen this time and time again. Swing voters will reward Republicans for their culture war nonsense up until the point where Republicans cause massive damage, and then they'll run right back to Democrats to fish the country out of the gutter. Now, we saw this in 2008 when voters elected Barack Obama to bail them out of the disastrous Bush presidency. We saw it again in 2020 when Biden was brought in to clean up Trump's mess. Voters are irrational at times and prone to complacency, but they aren't as dumb as Republicans seem to think that they are. Now, Biden is making a safe bet for his re-election. Remind voters that he's the only thing standing between them and Republicans ending these fundamental Social Security net safety programs. That's why the Republican Party increasingly opposes democracy and is even embracing fascism. If they have to rely on the democratic systems, their multi-generational scheme to finally end Social Security and Medicare will likely never come to fruition, and hopefully it doesn't. So, if you like the video, you can get the video, like and subscribe to my channel, RBW King. You can also hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified when a new video comes out. And if you want to support my work even further, you can donate to my Patreon link, which you can find in the About section of YouTube. And for just as little as a few bucks a video, your donation can help go a long way. And also leave a comment, let me know what you think. And thanks for listening.